We've witnessed a revival of maxi weddings with couples going all out for the big day. And this trend is continuing into 2025. So brides are using their wedding day as an opportunity to showcase different facets of their personality, with designers catering to the demand for versatile multi-look collections. So it isn't enough to say yes to the dress. You have to say yes to the outfits, plural. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the I Just Want This Done Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Rayford Dalton Palmer. So great, he has 3 names. And Rahul Iyer, stealthy with 2 names.
Yes.
We're happy to be here again for another episode of our show. As always, we're going to talk about some celeb divorce news and some wedding information, a little Dua Lipa for you fans out there. A little talk about Bill Gates, quick mention about the marriage gap for women. I thought this interesting Axios article we'll talk about briefly. Jessica Alba's estranged husband moves into bachelor pad. Okay, we've got Jessica Alba cash divorce update with some stuff we didn't know in our last episode. And we're going to talk about divorce arbitrations for our serious topic. This is going to be, what the heck is a divorce arbitration? And when is it useful? When's it not useful? And why is this a trend all of a sudden? Why are big time divorce lawyers all of a sudden advertising divorce arbitration in Cook County, Chicago specifically, as a solution? Let's talk about that. Then we've got listener questions to answer, several good ones. That's what we got for the show. So without any further ado, let's get rolling. First, I want to talk briefly about the Dua Lipa Callum Turner, if I'm pronouncing that right, engagement. It has sparked speculation about their upcoming wedding. Experts predict. I guess they have to get experts.
Yes, to make these predictions.
Well, this is the serious expertise. The experts are predicting that Dua multiple outfit changes during her wedding day. Yes, experts. Reflecting a growing trend among celebrities, because there's actually an article here. This is from HelloMagazine.com. Article is on weddings, and the article says, with wedding season on the horizon, this is a quote, 2025 is set to bring a fresh wave of A-list nuptials. If there's one thing we like on this show, almost as much as A-list divorces, because they're interesting, is A-list weddings, even better, the multi-billionaire Indian weddings, because they're phenomenal. There's nothing like that, right? And they always involve A-list celebs. They pay millions of dollars to bring A-list celebs to the weddings. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Right. From Dua Lipa to Lady Gaga, several new A-list engagements have sparked speculation about the biggest bridal trends we can expect from celebrity weddings. Okay. By the way, we should get a wedding consultant on who does like fancy weddings.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah. Maybe one of those rich Indian weddings where they bring the playlist to life by bringing the actual artists to perform.
Yeah. If you're one of those people, we'd like to talk to you, because that would be really interesting to hear like what's going on behind the scenes about these things. You don't have to name any names. The rise of max weddings and multiple outfit changes. Dua Lipa, known for her bold and trend-setting style, I don't dispute that, could opt for a high fashion wedding look to her special day with Callum Turner. He was in Masters of the Air, the Apple TV miniseries, which was phenomenal, by the way. Age 34, 6'2". So after the COVID years of mandated micro weddings, we've witnessed a revival of maxi weddings for 2024, with couples going all out for the big day. And this trend is continuing into 2025. We can expect nothing less from Dua Lipa's wedding. Okay. So brides are using their wedding day as an opportunity to showcase different facets of their personality. Rahul, I don't know if you knew that. I was not aware of that. With designers catering to the demand for versatile multi-look collections. So it isn't enough to say yes to the dress. You have to say yes to the outfits, plural. Now, in my day, because I'm an old man, you had the wedding dress, and then there was like the reception thing, which was usually just an abbreviated, you'd like shorten the veil and whatnot and have kind of a simplified thing for the reception party. And then usually afterwards, there was usually like an outfit to wear to leave, I think. I may be getting that wrong, but apparently we're going more with that. So good for Dua and Callum Turner. So awesome.
We want prenup. We want prenup.
We want prenup. So hopefully Callum is smart, and maybe Dua Lipa, in these deals, a lot of times we find out the singer makes a lot more than the actor. We have seen this pattern before.
Interesting. It's almost like, you have these weddings in sort of a funny concept. It's sort of like they're almost all becoming like those like big fat Indian weddings where everyone is trending there, where there's multiple outfit changes. And now maybe sometime from now, you're going to see weddings that are 2 or 3 days long for celebrations and stuff. So maybe that's what's happening. Who knows?
It's interesting. The one thing we've talked about is, beware of the destination wedding. That's one. And then beware of trivializing the wedding. Those to us are red flags for divorce down the road. But hopefully they have a serious wedding and get that prenup. So, all right, let's talk next about Jessica Alba situation, Rahul. Tell us about what's going on with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the latest update, we spoke about this on our previous episode, that there were rumors and rumblings that they were separating and heading for divorce. And so now Yahoo Entertainment, an article that says Jessica Alba's estranged husband moves into luxury bachelor pad amid divorce from the actress. So she officially filed for divorce. He has now vacated and moved into his quote unquote new bachelor pad in LA. Apparently, the couple did not sign a prenup, although they both are quote unquote extremely amicable, according to this article, and so it might not really be an issue. They say that the exact reason for the divorce yet remains unclear. We have that as an update that there's no prenup. He's moved out. He is now residing in the popular 10,000 apartment building that sits in between Beverly Hills and Century City.
Nice.
It's a 283 unit, 40-story building that costs between $10,000 and $65,000 per month in rent.
Nice.
And has luxury amenities, including a fully stocked bar, a Rolls-Royce valet service, and even a 1-acre private park.
They better have that stuff if you're paying $780 a year for the $65,000 a month one.
She filed with the help of popular divorce lawyer Laura Wasser, as court documents showed, that she planned to drop the surname Warren and return to her maiden name. And I'm reading from the article here. It was noted that the exact nature of their quasi-community assets and separate property and obligations are unknown and will be determined. They have both asked for joint and physical legal custody of their children, Honor, Haven, and Hayes. It does say that given the huge disparity in their individual net worth, with Alba being worth significantly more than him, Warren could potentially walk out of the marriage with some sort of payoff. However, he has a very substantial estate on his own end where allegedly his business ventures are reported to generate over $100 million in revenue. But she's also the co-founder of The Honest Company, and that's valued at around $640 million. So it's definitely very, very interesting, and we'll keep following up and see how it shakes out, I guess.
Yeah, it'll keep those lawyers busy for a while sorting out what we would call marital assets, but what they call community property in California. And of course, the filing of the divorce terminates creation of new marital property, which is unique for community property states. Our world, when you're getting divorced, you're still accruing new marital property and debts, which can be a real problem. So good for them. Should be interesting. Laura Wasser certainly knows what she's doing. She is one of the go-to folks in Beverly Hills and LA for celebs really anywhere. She's one of the biggest names in the business. Hopefully it'll sort out and they'll negotiate and work it out by agreement. But just when you've got assets of that scale, people might think, well, it's easier to get divorced when you have all that money. Well, it's easier in the way that you're not going to be destitute. These people aren't going to be poor. The kids are fine and they're going to be fine. In terms of the nuts and bolts of the divorce, it can be extremely complicated because the assets that are created during the marriage, if you have no prenup, now untangling all that stuff and figuring out what it's worth and making sure everybody gets a fair shake gets really complex. If you have a couple people that are successful in business and they're building businesses and buying stuff during the marriage, it gets really tricky. So it's not like you're dividing a 401k that just has a big number on it.
You don't have a savings account or a checking account that's got $500 million sitting in it. You don't have W-2 wages that say $100 million a year, right? It's not how this is.
You wouldn't need Laura Wasser to divide just a giant bank account. You need someone with the skills set like that to handle complex estates. And it's somebody that's been doing this a long time, understands the unique issues in these cases, and can do those things more efficiently. And she does it right. She keeps these things, case may be filed in court, and I'm sure that's done in California to stop the accrual of marital property or community property. And then they try to negotiate out of court and keep it private. So good on them. We'll see how that goes and keep giving you updates as we know more information. Moving on, there's an interesting article in Axios that was about marriage rates. The share of U.S. women married at age 45 was compared by birth year and education level. And what they're finding is the rate of more highly educated women being married dropped from about 78% in 1930 to about 70%-ish in 1940 and has stayed relatively hovering around 70%. This only goes through 1980, but it stayed around that time through 1980. And with women who haven't gone to college, their rate of marriage has dropped to 52% in 1980. It's a steady, 45-degree angle downward, and they're trying to think about what that might mean. They talk about the drop-off in marriage rates for women without degrees. They say it has everything to do with their male counterparts. Men without degrees have seen their economic prospects decline over the past few decades. That trend has been well documented. This is quoting the article by Axios from Emily Peck. We'll have the link in the notes, of course. And what they say, the potentially outdated words. They say a good man, in quotes, is harder than ever to find, at least for women with less than a 4-year degree. So they're getting married less often. This person says there's a lot of worrying in recent years that women with degrees would have trouble finding husbands. Fewer men are graduating from college. And we've seen that trend too, where men are graduating at rates lower than women from college as well. So I don't know what the recent data are, but then they say it turns out a good sized share of college educated women have always married men without bachelor's degrees per the research. Apparently, the bottom line is that declining economic prospects for men in this country are undermining marriage prospects for women. At least that's the theory, the takeaway from this study. I don't know what the current data shows. We know from surveys we've seen from more recent data that marriage rates in general are declining and people are getting married older. It's trended up from the early 20s to early 30s as the average age people are getting married. And when you go at socioeconomic status, people with more income marry at higher rates. Some saying that marriage is a privilege of the wealthy now. I think that's taking it too far, but I think teamwork is a strength. And you might say I'm cynical because I'm a divorce lawyer, but I've always said I'm a pro-marriage divorce lawyer. I got remarried and I'm happily remarried, and I still believe in the institution. So I just think to me, it's easier to go through life with a teammate like that. It has its downs, but to me, the upside is worth it overall. So, but anyway, get a prenup, folks.
We want prenup. We want prenup.
You still get a prenup, but yeah.
Probably not the best time to play Kanye lyrics, but it's iconic, so it's we'll go with it.
Ye's been going off the rails lately.
This is not showing support for him.
We love that line. If somebody else sang it, we'd play it. Okay, briefly before we talk about divorce arbitration, which I want to discuss, this is just kind of interesting, is Bill Gates is going on a publicity tour because he's got a book out now. And I'm not sure why he felt the need to put a book out, because he's got gazillions of dollars and everything, but he's getting older and I think he wants to be seen as a guy that has a legacy, probably a little sore that Steve Jobs gets like all the glory for the sort of those days of tech and has, an amazing biography about him written by Walter Isaacson. And Bill, I think, feels a little sorry for himself that he doesn't get the love. So he's come out with this book. I haven't read it, but he's making a publicity tour. And it's like, this is not a guy who is public about his life at all, but now he's coming out with stuff. He made some earlier comments about his famous divorce from Melinda French, who he met at Microsoft. Melinda French Gates, he said at one point it was his biggest regret. And in an interview, it's a very weird comment that he says, and this is from E, by the way, and we're going to link this, obviously. But in a previous interview, he said he regretted the divorce, but then he cleared the air about where the couple stands in their relationship now. But I don't think he helped himself. The tech nerd thing got the best of him or something. Listen to this. And it's a clever article, brief article here written by Gabriel Chung. But this is a quote. Bill Gates is hitting backspace past comments about his divorce. Though the Microsoft co-founder previously called the demise of his decades-long marriage with ex Melinda French Gates, with whom he shares 3 kids, 28, 25, and 22, he said it was a mistake. But then he says he wouldn't recode their relationship in hindsight. This is the article, the author. Here's the quote that is a little strange to me. And maybe this is just this guy's personality. But I don't think he did improve his previous comment. Despite the fact that the divorce wasn't great, he said during a February 4th appearance on the Today Show, having those 3 kids, the work we were able to do together, even if I knew that it wouldn't last forever, I would still do it again. It's okay to say that a divorce was your biggest regret. That's not a bad thing to say. A lot of people would say that about their divorces because your kids get hurt and all that stuff, and you wish your marriage could have been great. And it's that you regret the divorce, meaning the damage it causes and the hurt and all those things. You can still say, I believe it was the right decision, but I regret it. Of course.
And I regret it. And I know even if I did it again, I would still have to do it the second time if I had a do-over, and I would still regret it, but it had to be done.
You get that, but it's sort of weird how he says, and saying the divorce wasn't great. That's kind of like, wasn't great sounds like you went to Chuck E. Cheese and you didn't really like the pizza. Chuck E. Cheese wasn't great, but the birthday party for my kid was good. You know what I mean? It's like...
Yeah, that's great. I mean,
In fact, the 69-year-old said he's since moved past the divorce. Oh, okay, well, all right, great. Melinda's doing well, Bill continued. I think she's doing really well. I've got a lot of work that I love to do, so I'm not really complaining about anything. He's grateful to have phenomenal kids. Well, good. Okay, and he's been dating some person, Paula Hurd, since 2023. Okay, lovely. Kind of a weird thing to say. I think it's okay to say you regret the divorce and then to sort of say, well, yeah, it wasn't great, but I would still do it again. And it sounds like he means the divorce or the marriage. I don't know. Anyway,
Both. He'd probably get married again to her, and he'd get divorced again to her.
I think he needs to work with a publicist to kind of refine what he's saying on this.
I do appreciate, though, that he didn't go for a radical change of appearance, sort of like Bezos did. Even Elon Musk did, for that matter. He didn't inject himself with HGH and go bald and all that stuff. The Doctor Doom, like, evil supervillain kind of look.
Yeah, he never looked like that. That's a huge transformation. We're speculating, of course, allegedly. Look at the guy. He looks totally different than he did 20 years ago. Okay, and remember, folks, nobody gets ripped unless they're on gear or TRT and lifting a lot. So it's not just broccoli and lifting weights. Watch More Plates, More Dates on YouTube for more info on that, by the way. Okay, we want to talk about divorce arbitrations now, and this is an alternative dispute resolution method. So, Rahul, can you explain to the audience briefly what is divorce arbitration? And then I'll talk a little bit about kind of what it's not. And we'll talk about sort of where did this come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So to put it simply, divorce arbitration is a form of, like you said, alternative dispute resolution. People often refer to it as ADR, and it's sort of one of those acronyms that everybody just knows, ADR versus saying alternative dispute resolution. It's basically where a neutral third party, the arbitrator, hears evidence and arguments from both spouses and their attorneys and makes a decision on the disputed issues. So they're basically like a private judge that you hire. They can decide things regarding the division of marital property, spousal maintenance, child-related matters, etc. Now, unlike other types of ADR, which is, mediation, for example, arbitration results in a decision by the arbitrator that can be binding on the parties. And so that's the biggest difference. I mean, before we get too ahead of ourselves here, that's basically what a divorce arbitration is.
You're paying for a private trial, and there are abbreviated rules of discovery. You're supposed to voluntarily exchange information, and then there's some simplified rules of evidence to make the hearing itself more efficient, which means documents can be admitted without foundation, which is normally you'd have a witness in there. If it's a document that was not created by one of the witnesses, let's say it's a report or documents generated by a bank or business documents, you wouldn't need the record keeper to come in and testify. Instead, you send the documents to the other lawyer and say, I'm going to admit these at the arbitration, and the other person has a chance to object ahead of time. It speeds up the hearing process is the general idea. Mm-hmm. These are run by private organizations. One of them is called JAMS. One's called End Dispute. There are other ones. And they charge sometimes a sizable fee for these services. And then you pay the arbitrator for their time, and you pay the company like JAMS for its facility. So that's how that goes.
And those arbitrators are typically retired judges. So it's not some random attorney off the street. Or, it could be, depending on how experienced they are, what their, level of expertise is. But typically you go to an arbitration with a retired judge because they've been there, done that. That's what they did for 30 years.
Yeah, sometimes you see veteran divorce lawyers doing this at the tail end of their careers also, where they do mediations and they also serve as arbitrators. And you can do parenting arbs, you can do financial or an entire divorce. The little bit of history, divorce arbitration was really an alien concept in this area in Illinois until fairly recently. And we first saw it used in Cook County, Chicago area, the immediate Chicago area, for financial cases, and specifically for financial matters. The courts would refer people out to some financial arbitrations. And I imagine somebody was doing it privately. I wasn't aware of it. I've been a lawyer for 30 years and been doing divorce since 2001. And I really wasn't aware of financial arbs or any kind of divorce arbitration until fairly recent years. And it really hasn't caught on yet largely in this area. So recently, Rahul and I have noticed, and we've noticed in our firm, a trend among lawyers in the city. We have a city office, but let's say firms that are headquartered just only in Chicago that really just focus on Cook County, these firms have started promoting arbitration, or some lawyers in these firms have started saying, hey, consider arbitration. It's great. It's this great alternative. Well, kind of wondered, why is this? Why all of a sudden a few high profile attorneys are promoting this? Well, I have my theories, and this is me guessing based on my experience and knowledge of the situation. But what I think is going on here is, for example, why aren't they recommending mediation or collaborative? They talk about in their advertising, and they say, well, the system's broken. Cook County takes too long, blah, blah, blah. And we talk about Cook County being 2 to 4 or 5 years to go to trial, and it can be a disaster area because the courts are overloaded there. They have huge dockets. We know it's like 750 to 1,000 cases per judge.
Oh, it's even more than that, I suspect, actually. I'll tell you that. It's probably the third largest courthouse in the country, I believe, in terms of volume. And there's 33 divorce judges in Cook County, and they serve serve whatever the population of Cook County is. And so it's millions. It's not necessarily the court's fault. It's just they're doing the best they can. It's just 2 to 5 years is just way too much.
Well, so it's slow in Cook County. And obviously that is a problem that needs to be addressed. I'm not knocking that. But what I think, why aren't they recommending ADR, like collaborative mediation and all that? Well, you get to still fight in arbitration. You still get to do discovery, basically. You got to exchange documents. You have all this process around documents. You still have a courtroom-like process. It's still a trial. It's simplified somewhat, but the rules of evidence are somewhat lax in divorce courts anyway in Illinois. Divorce lawyers who've been there know that's true, especially if you've been in criminal court or civil court outside of divorce court and then gone in to see the difference. Judges do have relaxed rules of evidence, and there's reasons for that. We won't go into that now. But I'm skeptical of this arbitration trend a little bit. Can be a useful tool for some people who just can't agree and they need, let's say, a judge in quotes to make a decision and they don't want to wait for 2 to 5 years. Then I can see arbitration being an advantage. I'm not saying it's not advantageous. I could see a place where it could be useful, but it won't be cheap. You're going to pay that arbitrator and the arbitration system money to do their thing. So nothing's free, but it could be much better than the alternative of spending 2 to 5 years in Cook County Court going around and around. So the right cases could be suitable for arbitration. I think it's an interesting trend, and we'll see sort of how it grows and if it gets more popular. You know, when people reach an issue where they just can't agree, maybe they're okay with an arbitrator deciding.
You know, it's one of those where how much is it worth for you getting divorced over the next 3 months versus the next 3 years? How much is that worth to you, and how much are you willing to pay for that?
To be fair, I don't know that it's 3 months, probably more like 9 when you're all done. But yeah.
And it's not for everybody. Sometimes the cost will outweigh the benefits. So in court, you don't have to pay a judge. They'll be there with you for 3 to 5 years, but you're not paying them. I mean, you are as a taxpayer technically paying them, but you're not fronting costs, which you will be for an arbitrator.
One other important consideration, if the arbitrator makes a mistake, you may not be able to appeal. So appeals can be limited or prevented in binding arbitration. So you've got to understand that if you call it an advantage, one advantage is there is a set system with court. And if a court made a really wrong decision legally, there is an avenue to take it up on appeal. Now, no free lunch. Appeals are at least $15,000 on a side typically. And you're going to spend months or a year waiting for a decision. But if it's important enough to you, that's something to weigh in consideration. So like any of these things, your mileage may vary. Consult an experienced divorce attorney in your area for advice, like us at STG Divorce Law in Chicago. We're happy to consult with you on that topic. What's the right tool for you? It's going to depend on your situation. So we just wanted to mention it because we really hadn't talked about divorce arbitrations before. So they're real, they're a thing, and there are people offering services as divorce arbitrators who certainly have the experience and background. I'm a little skeptical about law firms sort of promoting it because I'm not sure that their motives are all pure, but I'm not going to tar anybody with that brush. So I'm not naming any names, but I am skeptical. So what we shall see. Next, we've got listener questions. So Rahul, I'll ask you the question and you can answer this one, then maybe I'll do the next one. Yeah, so this one, anybody bought a home? This is from the Illinois Divorce Support Network, our private Facebook group. Link is in the description, free to join. Just need an email address. We send you our divorce information newsletter. Opt out at any time. Totally private. You can post questions anonymously and we answer the questions and we do short videos or we answer them here. So we pick the best ones, the ones we think will help the most people. So here's a good question to answer. Anybody bought a home while the divorce is in progress and you're uncertain about how long it takes to get the divorce finalized? Suggestions, please.
So I guess what's that asking?
It's really asking, can you buy a house while the divorce is proceeding and how do you engineer that? Let's assume money's not the problem. Let's assume legally is the concern. You know, the marital property question, that kind of thing. So number one, can you buy a house during the divorce process? 2, how would you do that? 3, what would be the concerns?
Simple answer, yes, you can buy a house during a divorce process. There's nothing barring someone from purchasing a house. However, before you do, you really should have a conversation with your divorce lawyer because everybody's divorce is at different stages and you don't want to do something like buying a house and throwing a wrench into what might otherwise be happening. So while you can buy a house, you shouldn't necessarily buy a house unless and until you get the thumbs up from your lawyer. How do you engineer that? Well, in a divorce process, you have to, you have some considerations to make because the house that you're purchasing, like earlier in the show, you mentioned the difference between community property and marital property. The house you're purchasing will be marital property. And so the question becomes, how much are you putting down? Where's that money coming from? Are you using marital funds to put money down? Well, it has to be, because there's, unless you have a separate non-marital estate from which you're purchasing, which you still should guard because you're buying what is now considered marital property. So there's some considerations that go in with that. So the first thing you have to do is, if you want to purchase a house, you want to make sure you speak with your lawyer and get some sort of an agreement with the other side saying that the money you're using to buy this house is either your money from a separate estate, or it's money that you are asking to be pre-distributed to you. So it's coming off the balance sheet as it's being allocated to you in the final division, or however the estate gets divided. You're carving out, you're saying, hey, I need $100,000 to put down. So we'll make sure, you get credit for the $100,000 I take out. And that's like a pre-distribution to me. We're carving that out. So what the house I purchase will be obviously with my non-marital property, meaning you don't have any interest in the house that I'm buying. So that's the agreement you have to make. You also have to consider, where are the monthly payments coming from? So you're earning income, which is marital, during the marriage. Are you paying marital assets towards that? So you'll want to make sure the agreement also says that the money, income you're allowed to pay for this house is either A, coming out of your share, or somehow otherwise discussed, so that there's no confusion on the back end as to the income you're spending. So those are considerations you want to make. And that's sort of the way you have to go about it. Is I want to make sure my bases are covered and my client's bases are covered before they go out and buy a house in the middle of a divorce.
So it's doable, but you just want to take these steps to protect yourself and make sure you've nailed these things down so you don't have an issue later on. So yeah, it's possible. Just make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's.
Let me ask you this one. We want to sell a life insurance policy and split the proceeds, but we are not in a divorce yet. How do we keep this money out of a divorce?
What we're really talking about here is a postnuptial agreement. So there is a way to do this. If you prepare a postnuptial agreement, it doesn't have to be a very lengthy document. The postnups we typically do are elaborate things that are really divorce settlement agreements that cover all aspects of somebody's estate. So usually we're creating a document that talks about how you're handling finances during the marriage, and we're creating a document that says, okay, if we get divorced, this is going to happen. And these are very complicated things. If you have one issue like this, and all you're trying to do is isolate these assets and say that they're non-marital, and you're just dividing something 50-50, it's not, you could do like a 2-page postnuptial agreement, a very simple one that says, we're agreeing to divide this stuff equally. We believe this is a fair division of this asset, and we're declaring that this is our non-marital property, and that is not subject to a division in a future divorce case. And we understand it. We've disclosed information about our assets and liabilities, and we agree to this freely and voluntarily. And basically, you can create a very simple document that you'll both sign, and I get it notarized. And this would be the protection you have for those assets to isolate them and prevent them from being thrown back into a divorce case. So you can do this with an asset like this. It's possible. I would urge you to consult with an attorney about getting this postnup done. It would be a quite simple one, and probably a lawyer wouldn't charge you very much for it, because this kind of postnup is an easy one to do, relatively speaking, rather than a full-on postnuptial agreement that we normally talk about. So yeah, the answer is it's doable. Next one. This is a little bit longer one. The person plans on starting divorce later this year. The question is, the husband bought our son a brand new car. The spouse was against the purchase. Thought he should get a used car. Now payments have to be made. Husband is not giving access to the finance company. Instead wants her to Zelle him payments and trust he's actually applying her money to the payments. If I do so and have proof of Zelle payments from my separate account, will that count towards marital debt? As in, I won't be responsible if he didn't apply the money. I've asked repeatedly to get access. He's financially irresponsible. So this is really one of those kind of questions about marital assets and debt we get all the time. So if you could address that.
A marital debt is basically a debt that you incurred during the marriage. This vehicle, or the car loan, or the note on the vehicle, would be a marital debt. The husband, despite the wife's objections, has gone ahead and purchased the vehicle, and they're not in court right now. There's no divorce proceeding currently pending. So, I mean, there are no rules to govern how they act. They can do whatever they want. There's just a couple living there and having a disagreement. So in a divorce, though, if he says this is marital debt and you need to split this debt, both parties will be on the hook for a certain portion of that debt. Now, it's not necessarily 50-50. Wife's concern here apparently is that the money she is giving him for her share is not actually being applied to the loan. loan. And so she's afraid that the money she's giving him is just being spent on something else or just he's keeping, and the loan is still outstanding in the amount that she is paying. So if that were the case, a court is not under any obligation to divide something 50-50. A court can see you've made these payments, especially if the Zelle payments say, payment for car note, or whatever it says.
You're right. It could be debts divided in a different way or something. But what I was thinking about is a lot of times the debt just goes with the asset. So like if this is the kid's car, they're just going to have to work out how they're going to pay for the kid's car. And you're right. It might be according to their relative incomes later, or who knows. But I guess the part I wanted to mention was all of this back and forth is sort of a wash. Keeping track of paying stuff and you're not divorced, you're just moving money around in the same pot. You're literally just, if you imagine his cash and your cash in one pot, you guys think it's separate. This couple getting divorced, in their minds, it's separate. But in the judge's mind, you get to a divorce case, it's all just in one pot. The way I say it is separate pockets on the same pair of pants.
A court will not want to go into some sort of an accounting function where everybody starts talking about, well, I paid for all these groceries, I paid your phone bill, I paid the light bill. Court does not want to account for who paid what during the marriage. It's not really relevant because they're all in the same set of pants.
Yeah. So if you think about it, it's like when she says, well, I'm worried about where these monies are going to be applied. Well, let's say he's stacking the cash up and he doesn't pay. Well, the money's sitting there in the bank account. You're going to get half of it back at some point. Or if he's paying some other debt, well, he's paying a different debt that you would have owed anyway. If it's small time, you're sending him $300 each month for the payment, and he's buying booze with it or going out with the guys with the cash. Good luck chasing it. My suggestion to this person is stop paying. He wanted to buy the truck, fine. He can pay the bills. You pay for something else. Pay for something that if you want to believe what's going on, you want to know where the money's going, put the money towards something you know you're paying for. Buy the kids clothes, pay for gas, something you know that's a real expense, and you're not worried your husband's socking it away somewhere. I've been divorced for 8 months now. My ex just filed a motion to reduce support, even though he agreed to everything. I'm guessing, in the divorce case, he's representing himself. I am not. Anyone go through this and have a good outcome. Can you explain post-decree modifications of support, Rahul, and the burden that they have to meet to modify?
The time is really kind of a red herring. They could be divorced for 2 months or 2 years. So, child support is one of those things where it is always modifiable. Someone can. I presume this is child support. You just say motion to reduce support. It's been 8 months. You feel like you just finished court and now he's already going back. Can he do that? Yes, legally he can. He can file a motion to modify child support. Now, whether he's got any legs, whether it's got legal basis for doing that is the real question, not related to really length of time. So he needs to show that there's been a substantial change in circumstances that warrant a modification of his child support. And really, there's the unwritten rule of thumb that I always sort of tell people is there's got to be at least a 20% delta, a 20% difference for there to be any sort of a meaningful or substantial change. Typically, people get fired or they're laid off or there is a significant pay cut, and that could be oftentimes unexpected. And so it could happen 3 months after the divorce or, 8 months, who knows? So we don't really know what the basis for him filing it is. The question just says he just filed a motion to reduce support, even though he agreed to everything. And so without knowing more about the reason or basis or what really the financial circumstances are, it's really hard to say whether or not there is a legitimate reason to modify here. The question is, he's representing himself. I am not. You have an attorney who is going to advise you exactly what the grounds are, whether it's legitimate, and whether you have any reason to oppose it. Anyone go through this and have a good outcome. This is a fairly common thing that happens. So this is by no way a unique situation you're going through. Modifications of support post-decree are very, very common, happen for a variety of different reasons, all with same foundational point, which is a substantial change in circumstance. Now, your attorney has to determine whether that what he's alleging is actually substantial.
Yeah, and I'm thinking 3 things come to my mind. One is he's going to have to prove it. So he's going to have the evidence to show that he's down, his income's dropped.
So yes, he has the burden. You don't have to disprove it. He has to prove it.
He's got the job to prove it. The other thing is that's a two-way street. If he makes more money, you can go modify and get more support. So when it goes back up, you can be right there and say, okay, now I want more support. The third thing I would mention is if it's child support, the actual change is probably very minor. The percentage change per unit of money is not great. If you play with the formula that they use to calculate this, fairly large swings in income don't move the needle a lot in support. Now, if he lost his job entirely, that's one thing. And what happens a lot of times there is they abate support, or they set it at the level of unemployment until they get hired again.
It's like $50 a kid or $100 a kid, whatever it is now.
They set some nominal thing, but then it bumps up again. If he's just like making 10 grand less a year or 20 grand less a year or something, you might be pleasantly surprised that even the reduction's not all that much. And if he's not represented by an attorney, he might not really realize that. It used to be that if you made 10 grand less, or you made X amount of money less, it really impacted support a lot. But now the way the formula works, it doesn't move the needle as much as it used to. So good luck with that. Wish you the best on that situation. So that's all we have for listener questions. And we just want to remind you that STG Divorce Law in Chicago and the suburbs sponsors this show and makes this possible. So if you ever need to consult with a divorce attorney in Illinois, in the Chicagoland area especially, please consider STG Divorce Law. And we are at stglawfirm.com. That's stglawfirm.com. I am the best-selling author of I Just Want This Done, How Smart, Successful People Get Divorced Without Losing Their Kids, Money, and Minds. Available on Amazon, Kindle, Audible, and where all great ebooks are sold. This is the book. Thank you. 300 pages, 8-hour audiobook. I did the audiobook recording myself, and coming out with my next book, I Just Want to Know, very soon. Look for us on social. I'm easy to find at Rayford Palmer on Instagram, Twitter, or X, and also at Rayford Palmer on TikTok. So otherwise, STG Divorce Law, easy to find by Googling, also easy to find by searching my name, Rayford Dalton Palmer. Rahul, how can folks find you online?
People can find me on my social at Chicago Divorce and also on LinkedIn. And related to your TikTok, I was going to tell the viewers, I think if you hit a certain number of followers or views, didn't you say you were going to do some sort of a TikTok dance?
Once I have 100,000 followers, I will dance on TikTok. I'm well short of that right now. I'm around 23,000, I think. So follow and get your friends to follow, and I will dance, and it will be embarrassing, but I promised. I've been promising for years. I get 100,000, I will dance. I'll find the most absurd song to dance to, and I will dance. Thanks very much. That's all we have for the show today. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, guys.